Welcome, everybody, to another edition of Journey into the Light. I am your host tonight, Michael Long, and we're here tonight for a great hour coming up right now. If you're listening live or archive, I welcome you. And this first hour program is something I'm really very excited about as my guest. Garnet Schulhauser, a corporate lawyer, had an encounter with a homeless person. And from that encounter, it changed his life. And so much that he has written a book called Dancing on a Stamp. So I'm going to obviously let Garnet tell his story, and this is a two-part series. We're going to do another show with Garnet here next Thursday at the same time, so 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 7 o'clock Central Time. And always here on Jill Radio, the chat room is open, and Garnet was very gracious enough to offer to give one copy of his book away. We'll have a drawing in the chat room here a little bit later on in the broadcast. So hop on in the chat room if you're not in there yet and win a free copy of this great, great book. And as always here, we will open up the phone lines if you have a question for my guest tonight. Okay, so this hour of the program, my guest is an author of Dancing on a Stamp. So this hour we are not doing any readings. The next hour I do have Greg Keene on from Lilydale, and that will be in the next program. So, without further ado, let's welcome live from Canada, this is Garnet Schulhauser to the show. Garnet, are you there? Welcome.
I'm here, Michael.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Okay. Yep. Yeah, and I can hear you. Thank you for inviting me on your show. I'm looking forward to your questions, and hopefully I can give you some insightful answers.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited because, these are the questions I know I have, and I know a lot of people that listen to this program and many people out there have, and I find your story just amazing. And so I know our time is short, so why don't we kind of get into it and kind of let us know how all this started with your encounter with the homeless person.
Sure. Well, Michael, at the time, I was as you mentioned, I was a corporate lawyer practicing law in Calgary, in Canada. I was with a very large firm, and it was in a high-rise office tower, and I was very much sort of the typical corporate lawyer, sort of straight-laced and stuffed shirt kind of a lawyer. Anyway, so this one day, it was a sunny afternoon in May of 2007, and I decided in sort of the middle of the afternoon to go for a stroll just to get some fresh air. So I was strolling down the street in front of our building, which was basically a pedestrian mall closed off to vehicle traffic. And I walked for a couple of blocks, just sort of taking in the sunshine and enjoying the fresh air. And all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this homeless man just jumped out right in front of me and sort of stopped me in my tracks. Now, I had sort of taken strolls on this street many times before, and I had run into homeless people before, and my usual practice was to just do a quick sidestep and go around them. But this man was very different. He looked like a typical homeless person. He had long, greasy, stringy hair and an unkempt beard, and he had dirty, slept-in clothes, and so he looked very much like the typical homeless person. Except there was something amazing about him. He had these amazing, sparkling, dazzling blue eyes that shone like two little blue stars, and his gaze just penetrated right into me, right into the depths of my soul. And I felt like he knew everything about me, even though we'd never met before. And I just sensed that he knew all my hopes and aspirations. He knew all my fears and my anxieties. He knew all my deep, dark secrets I never told anyone. And I just had this feeling that he could see right down through to the bottom of my soul. But even though I was sort of standing there feeling a bit naked and exposed, I didn't sort of turn and run, because at the same time, his eyes were sending me this amazing wave of pure, unconditional love, which just sort of started infusing my body and filling me with an amazing sense of peace and security. And so that was the feeling that kept me there. It was an amazing feeling, a feeling I've never had before. And I just stood there enjoying it. It was like I was in a time warp. I had no idea how long I was there, and I, in fact, didn't really care. I could have stood there for forever, basically. It was such a wonderful feeling. And then after a time, he broke the spell, basically. He said to me, "Why are you here?" And then he just turned and walked into the doorway of a nearby store. Well, when I finally sort of collected my wits, I figured I'd better go and follow this guy and find out who he was. So I went into the same store that he went into, and there was only one entrance and one exit, and I looked up and down the store, and this guy was nowhere to be seen. So I went outside, and I went back into the street, and I walked up and down for 15 or 20 minutes looking for him, but he was nowhere in sight. So I sort of gave up, and I walked slowly back to my office with my head in a daze and all these thoughts swirling around, and questions like, who was this guy, and why did he ask me that question, and how did he fill me with such an amazing feeling of peace and security. So that night, these questions kept on swirling in my mind, and I knew that I had to go back and find this guy. So the next day, very same time, I went back out on the same street for another walk, hoping to find him. So I walked for a few blocks and back and forth, and after about 15 minutes, when I was just about ready to give up, then I spotted him sitting alone on a bench. So I walked up to him, and I said, "Who are you, and why did you ask me that question yesterday?" And he said, "You've been asking a lot of questions, and I'm here to give you the answers and to help you on your journey." And so that was the beginning of our conversation. Initially, I was a bit skeptical, because when he said to me he was here to help me, and my lawyer brain kicked in, and I sort of thought, I said to him, how can you help me when it doesn't appear that you could even help yourself? Because you look like you've been sleeping in the street for weeks, and you smell like a dead fish. Well, he just gave me a big smile. He said, looks can be deceiving. He said, you look like you're a very successful corporate lawyer with everything under control, but we both know that's just a facade. He said, you can turn around and go back to your office and see if you can find the answers to your questions in all those emails waiting for you on your computer, or you can sit down and have a chat with me and take a chance. After all, what do you have to lose? Well, I sort of intuitively I knew that, yeah, he's right. I mean, at most I could lose half an hour of my time by talking to this guy if he turned out to be a total flake, but maybe there's something more to it. So I sat down and we began our conversation. And that was sort of the second time I'd seen him, and we had a series of conversations over the next few months, which were really quite amazing. He revealed to me that he was actually one of my spirit guides in disguise, and that he had come here for the purpose of answering the questions I'd been asking for most of my adult life. And so the conversation was, I would ask questions and he would answer them. He was a very funny guy, down to earth. He didn't lecture or preach to me, and our conversation was like two friends chatting over a beer. So it was really quite interesting and quite inspirational to me, and it was really a big change in my life at that stage.
Garnet, did you feel that at this point when you first encountered this homeless person, did he look, like just any other homeless person? Did he? I mean, I know you said the eyes just sparkled, but did anything, give you any kind of thoughts that maybe it's, he is maybe something more than just, a homeless person?
Yeah, I mean, he absolutely did look like a typical homeless person, but what really got me was his eyes and this amazing wave of unconditional love that was coming from his eyes and infusing my whole body. So just that feeling, I knew I'd never had that from anyone before, never had that feeling before, and I knew it was coming from him. And so, immediately I just thought, well, this guy is somebody very different. And so even though I was initially a bit skeptical because I was a lawyer all my life, and that's how we're trained to think. But I just knew that I guess my intuition finally kicked in, and I just thought, well, I've got to sit down here and talk to this guy. And then once I began talking to him, it was very evident to me that he was a very special person. And when he told me that he was one of my spirit guides, it just sort of clicked that yes, that makes sense, and I understand what you're saying, and I have no doubt that you are who you say you are. And that just was confirmed throughout my conversation as we talked, because he said some amazing things, and he said it with such candor and conviction that in my mind I just felt immediately that what he was saying was true, and that I was just quite prepared to believe whatever he said. So there's no doubt once I got into it that this guy was a very special guy, and that he was in fact one of my spirit guides.
Well, that's truly amazing, and it gives everybody pause to think, who they run into each day, and not to just, as you're saying, normally you would sidestep a homeless person, because in your case, your spirit guide came to you this way first off, right? Because didn't think you would. Go ahead and tell the story on that part.
Oh, okay, yeah. So what you're getting into, Michael, is that partway into the conversation, when he told me he was one of my spirit guides, for the first 3 visits, he appeared to me as this homeless man. And then after that, he no longer appeared to me in a physical form. He just was a voice in my head. And when I asked him why he had appeared to me as the homeless man, he said, well, if he had just started talking to me as a voice in my head, I might have thought I was going crazy, and I might have ignored him. So he said that he chose this scheme, this device of appearing as a homeless person as a way of getting my attention and gently easing me into the conversation so that I would feel comfortable later with him merely communicating with me telepathically and as a voice in my head. So that's sort of how that was his scheme to get me into the conversation, and but it worked, and I think it was a good way of doing it. But after that first 3 meetings, we just conversed by telepathy, and that's how we've been talking ever since.
Well, that's so neat, and I just why don't we go? If you want to go more into the story, Garnet, but also, I'm interested in knowing, what did he say about, what's our purpose here on Earth? A lot of people have that question. What are we here to do? Did he give you an answer for that?
That was one of the yeah, absolutely. That was one of the questions that I had been asking myself over the last, few years. Is typically I would get up on a Monday morning, and I hated Monday mornings for whatever reason, and I would be looking at myself in the mirror as I was shaving, and these questions kept rolling through my mind, like, who am I? Why am I here? What's my purpose in life? And what happens after my body dies? Where do I go? And those questions sort of kept on rolling through my mind. So his purpose was to come here and to answer my questions, and and many others, and to write about it so others would hear my story. So who are we? Well, according to Albert, we're all eternal souls who live forever, and that we were created by the source, or as some people refer to it, the Creator, or all that is, or God, by whatever name. It's the source created us all. The source is the sum total of everything in the universe, and we are all part of the source and connected to each other. And he said, look at it like as though we were beings of energy that spun out like sparks of light from the central sun. Central sun, of course, being the source. So we were created to go out and explore and experience things in the universe that the source created. And so before being born here, we came from a wonderful place called the spirit side, or what some people call as the other side, or home, or, to some religions, heaven. We came from there, and we incarnated on Earth into a human body in order to experience things and learn lessons that aren't available to us on the spirit side. Because on the spirit side, there are, everything's just perfect. There's nothing but love and happiness and joy. We don't need to eat or drink or breathe or, find shelter or do any of those things on the spirit side because the conditions are perfect. We're just like beings of energy over there. And there are no negative emotions on the spirit side. So there's no hate or anger or fear or jealousy or grief. It's all just positive emotions. So part of our learning, part of our evolution as a soul is to incarnate into the denser planes like Earth. Earth is at a much lower vibratory rate and much denser mass, and so we choose to incarnate into humans on Earth in order to learn and experience things that are available on Earth but aren't available on the spirit side, and that's just part of our growth and evolution as a soul. So why are we here? We're here to learn and experience so that we can evolve our souls. And what in particular are we here for is we're here to try to carry out the things that we had planned for ourselves in our life plans, which we devised before we were born. And our life plans basically set out all the major circumstances of our lives, our lives as a human. So it'll set out things like our names and our places of birth and the identity of our parents and our siblings, and our children and our spouse, and places we go to school, and major things like that. And we design those life plans with a view to experiencing the things and learning the lessons that we need to take the next step in our evolution. So we devise all this. We choose to come here to incarnate, and so then when we're born, our purpose really is to carry out what we put in the life plan. The problem is, for us, is that we are not allowed to learn or to remember what we put in our life plan. So that makes it a little tough. And the other part of the equation is that when we're on Earth, we have free will to take actions and make decisions, based upon what we think, what our human minds think is best for us at the time. And so because of this free will and because we don't know what's in our life plan, we often go off course. And we have to sort of sometimes stumble around and try to figure out, by listening to, our intuitive messages and other messages from our guides, we have to try to figure out what it was that we wanted to do here on Earth when we were back on the spirit side before we were born. So that's why we're here. We're here to learn and experience things, and the challenge that we have living on Earth is that we don't know what it was that we had intended for our lives here, and we have to try to figure it out by listening to all the whispers in our mind and our intuitive messages, and looking for the road signs put out there for us by our guides, and that's how we have to try to figure it out. So that's one of the big challenges of being incarnated on Earth. That's why Earth is one of the most difficult schools for souls in the universe.
Yeah, I read that a lot, that this is the hardest place in the universe, to learn. But and you think about it, back in May, Garnet, my family, and myself, we went through a tornado here in Oklahoma, and through very hard times. And a lot of people go through hard times also. And during those hard times, it's hard to believe, that we would pick to come here and experience those things. But I guess we do, right?
Yeah, we do, and I raised that same issue with Albert. I said, look, you tell me I come from a very wonderful place with the spirit side, and that nobody made me come here. I chose to come here, and I could have stayed on the spirit side. So basically, I said to him, pardon the pun, but why on earth would I want to come here? Because it's a harsh planet. There's harsh physical conditions. We have hurricanes and tornadoes and floods and earthquakes and forest fires and all kinds of harsh physical conditions that we have to live with, and we have to deal with negative emotions by other humans that can cause us harm and try to control our own negative emotions. And why would I do this? He said, well, it's difficult for you to understand that now because you're sitting there and you don't remember what it was like on the spirit side or what you had planned for your life on Earth. But he says when you're on the spirit side, things look much differently because a typical lifespan on Earth is just like a blink of an eye on the spirit side. That's basically because the spirit side, they don't have linear time like we have here. There's no past, and future. There's only a present there, which is a difficult concept for us to understand. But because of that, when you're sitting on the spirit side and you say, I want to go and have this life on Earth, it's just like you look at it like an adventure that's just for a very short time based upon time as they know it on the spirit side, and before you know it, you'll be back home on the spirit side to figure out what you learned from your last life and choose something for your next life. And so it's not a hardship when you're on the spirit side to say I'm going to come to Earth. I mean, it's challenging and it can be difficult, but it's it's sort of like somebody saying, well, I'm going to decide to climb Mount Everest. It's sort of a challenge, something you want to do, and something that you're going to grow from. And nobody makes you do it, but there's lots of people who do it, or run a marathon, or do any of those things that we do on Earth that aren't required, but it's something that is a personal challenge to us. So that's how we look at it before we come here. And even though you could question why you do it when you're sitting here on Earth with all the conditions that you run into, like you mentioned, a tornado. But before you came here, you knew full well that those were some of the things that you could run into when you incarnated on Earth, and you chose to do so anyway.
Yeah, I just, wish that we could, go back to the other side just for a brief time and say, okay, now why did I do this? Because many times we'll blame, I know, as I told you briefly, I blamed, God for many years because, my parents died when I was just a teenager. But now, much older and more spiritual, I realize, there has to be a reason for that. There had to be a reason. But, all those years of blaming, God and a lot of years of trying to separate myself from God because I thought, what kind of loving God would do that to kids? Kids not even out of school yet, and their parents are gone, never to, when you pretty much need your parents the most.
Yeah, no, I understand, and that's a common reaction that people here have, like when a loved one dies, or in your case, your parents, when you were just a child. And you say, gee, why God? Why did you do this? This is mean and cruel, and I really needed them, and why are you doing this to me? Well, according to Albert, God or the Source doesn't do anything to us. He doesn't control the events in our lives. He doesn't manipulate things. He doesn't cause the good things to happen or the bad things to happen. God is sort of basically like an observer, just experiencing the things that you do, and whatever happens is fine. So, if there's a tragic accident, it wasn't because God caused it. It was because, if a soul is killed in a tragic accident, it's because the soul decided that it was time to exit this incarnation. And it could have been because that was one of the exit points that we all put into our life plans before we come here. We put several of these in, and as we go along with our lives on Earth, our souls then decide, well, do I want to take this exit path? Or do I want to wait a few years and take another one, or wait 50 years and take one down the road? And that's a decision that our souls make. And so, in your case, as difficult as it may be for you to accept, when your parents died, it wasn't accidental. It was because their souls decided it was time to leave this incarnation, and they may have done that because that they had learned all the lessons they needed to for this particular life, and it was time to go. Or it may have been that they were helping you learn some of your life lessons that you needed for your evolution. And basically there's a reason for everything, and what the reason was for your parents dying when you were a child, you're probably not going to know now, but you'll certainly know when you cross over to the spirit side yourself, and then it'll all be very apparent to you that it was all planned out and everything went according to plan, even though it seemed like a tragic accident while you're here on Earth.
Right, yeah. That's what I'm learning now, and you talk about, sometimes you think, well, boy, that was someone died so needlessly. They fell on something. There was this TV show that was called 6 Feet Under. It was on HBO some years ago, and they would start the show because the family worked in a funeral home, and they would start the show each time showing how someone died, and so many times it was just something just out of the blue. Like, one guy got hit by a golf ball, hit him a certain spot in the head, he just died. And people would say, boy, what a tragic mistake that is. But is it a mistake, or was it really, their exit time to go?
Yeah, no, clearly, as different as it may seem, the way they died, like a golf ball or something really very strange like that, when it seems like a sort of or a bolt of lightning that hits somebody, it seems something that's tremendously against the odds, something very unusual. Whether it's that or whether it's somebody dying from cancer, in every case, Albert said, it's not accidental. It didn't happen by chance. When somebody dies, it's because their soul decided it was time to leave. And so even if you have a plane that crashes and kills all 300 passengers on board, that wasn't an accident. That was because every one of those souls on board that plane wanted to exit at that time. And it was either pre-planned in their life plan, or, as Albert says, as we move along in our lives, we can change our exit plans as we go, depending on what we're learning and what we need to learn yet. So it's a very fluid sort of process. And every night when we sleep, Albert says that our souls temporarily leave our bodies and go back to the spirit side, where we huddle with our spirit guides and others in our soul group, and we analyze sort of what we've done so far in our lives and where we're going and where we should go, and we can actually tweak and modify our life plans during those meetings, and we can also change our exit points. So it's very fluid, and it's very much a case of what does the soul want at this particular point. Have they learned out most of the lessons and they want to exit, or do they feel that their life in this human is just too frustrating and they're not going to get anywhere, so let's just end it now and go back to the spirit side and we'll come back in another life. Various reasons for deciding to exit, but it's always the soul's choice. And if in fact, and I said to Albert, well, how does it work when you have, when I have my free will actions going and I don't know what's in my life plan, and I'm interacting with people around me every day, like on the street, on the freeway, at work, whatever. Those people are in the same boat. They have free will to take actions, but they don't know what's in their life plan. And so how is it that during the ordinary course of life on Earth, when you have all these free wills acting independently and without prior knowledge of what they should be doing, how is it that sometimes there won't be an accident that would cause somebody to die? And he said, that's because the solution to that is because we all have one or more guardian angels, and their function is to watch what we're doing while we're on Earth, and if there should be some circumstances coming up, and they can sort of see into the future, but if there's circumstances arising where your life might be terminated prematurely, in other words, before your soul wants to leave, they will actually intervene to make sure that doesn't happen. And they can intervene by sending the person just a very strong message that says, don't take your usual route to work today, take a different route. And then by doing that, you avoid a fatal crash on your usual route to work. Or it might even be something more dynamic and more physical, like the example I give him, or he gave in my book, was that he could be sitting there at a red light, waiting for the light to turn green, and your guardian angel might actually alter the timing of the traffic light so that the green light or the red light stays on for an extra 4 or 5 seconds before turning green, and that means that you won't be in the next intersection when somebody who's running a red light would have crashed into you if they hadn't changed the timing on the light. So they can actually do physical things. And most of the time, this is very subtle. Most people don't even know what happens. Occasionally, some people will, be saved from stepping in front of a bus by something that they think was, I just missed that. It must have been divine intervention. So sometimes you're kind of aware that something miraculous has happened, but a lot of times you're not aware of it, and you just carry on with your life. And that's how it is preserved. The decision to die or when to die is preserved for your soul to make on its own, and no one else makes it.
Well, that's all just fascinating. I have so many more questions. Of course, I'm glad we're doing another show next Thursday for everybody. And then before I go into some more questions, how do people get your book, Garnet?
Well, the easiest way is to, if they want to get it online, is to go to my website, which is dancingonastamp.com. And on the homepage, there's a number of buy links like Amazon and Barnes and Noble and various other sites in other parts of the world. You can also buy it directly from my publisher. And so if you click on any of those links, you'll get right to the place where my book is, and you just have to put in your order. There's a lot of bricks and mortar stores, Barnes and Noble's stores and other stores that carry it. Not all of them do. But if your favorite bookstore doesn't have my book in stock, they'd be happy to order it because it's easily ordered from my publisher's distributor. So those are the easiest places to get it. If you can't find any place, or none of those sites work, or you don't buy it online, they should just send me an email telling me where they are, and I will contact my publisher and see if we can't find some store in their neighborhood where we can send the book to. So, and my email address is on my website. It's contact@dancingonastamp.com.
Okay, very good. What did you learn from your spirit guide there about? Is there such place? I was raised Catholic. Is there such place as hell or purgatory?
No, and in fact, I was raised as a Catholic too, Michael, and so that's the way I was taught, was that when you die, you go pure before God, who created you, and you'll have to answer for what you did while you were on earth. And if you're good, you go to a very nice place called heaven, and if you're bad or just slightly bad, you go to a place called purgatory, and if you're really bad, you went to a place called hell where you burn in fire forever. So that was what I was raised with. Albert said, no, there is no hell, there's no purgatory. In fact, the soul of everybody who dies returns to the spirit side after their physical bodies die, and that's without exception. So that means that, and this is something that's hard for some people to accept, that means that the bad guys, the murderers and the terrorists, when they die, they go back to the spirit side, the same as Mother Teresa or the same as you and I, Michael. And that's just because that's where they came from, and there's no other place to go. And the idea of hell and purgatory is just a fiction created by various religions, including the Catholic Church. It's one of the devices that they use to control people through guilt and fear. And the fear part is that, look, if I'm not a good person, if I don't follow the rules of the church, I'm going to go to an awful place when I die, so I'd better keep on going to church and following their rules. And that's exactly why they created these concepts, because they wanted to keep people coming back and listening to them and following their rules. But Albert said, there is, when you die, there's no judgment by God or the source, and the source does not make rules for us to follow, and therefore there's no rules that you can break that would upset him, and the source doesn't need to be worshipped. You don't need to pay homage to the source. It's very contrary to the concept of God that, say, the Catholic Church had taught me when I was young. And so, when you die, you go back to the spirit side. There's no judgment by the source. The only person who judges what you did while you're on earth is yourself. Because when you get back to the spirit side, you go through what Albert called a life review, where you look back on everything you did in your life, right from the time you're born all the way through, and you review all the details, and you can see yourself reliving portions of your life as though you were back in your body, or you can watch your life like you were watching a 3D movie. And the interesting part of the life review is that you can actually feel and hear the emotions and the thoughts of the people around you when you are reacting with them, or when you were during your life. So, for example, if you said some mean and cruel things to somebody, back when you were 30 years old, in your life review, you'll actually be able to feel the hurt and the rejection that person felt as you were speaking your words. And that's a very powerful tool in terms of you being able to analyze what it was you did in your life and the effect of your actions and your words while you're living. And so it's really much of a learning tool. It's not meant to make you feel badly about what you did. It's designed to help you understand where you went wrong, so that you can, with the view to sort of planning your next life and trying to learn what you should have learned, or what you didn't learn in your previous life. So it's really so the judgment part, if anything, is your own judgment on what you do, but it's not in a negative sense. It's more like, okay, well, this is where I sort of went off course. I understand how I got there. Next time, I'm going to do better.
And, like you said, that part is hard for a lot of people to swallow, that, and I've had on, some psychic mediums that have come on and disagree with that. It's hard sometimes to understand that, hey, I'm going to come on, this earth plane, and I'm going to be a terrorist. I'm going to take down, the World Trade Center or something like that, something so horrible. And then just so it's something that is planned, you're saying. So it's not something where someone just kind of goes off course, like they were planning to, not do this, but they just went astray and they got with, is that what you're saying? They planned this before coming to the earth plane?
That's part of it, Michael. What Albert told me was that when bad things happen, when somebody murders somebody or a terrorist blows up some people or whatever, somebody beats somebody else in the back alley, he said there's two possible reasons why that happened. The first one is it may have been planned on the spirit side before all the players were born. So it may have been planned. So if you were to murder me, it may be that when we were both on the spirit side, for whatever reason, I wanted to experience being murdered, or you wanted to experience, killing somebody and then dealing with the punishment on earth. Whatever reason, we both decided that this should happen. And this, of course, would be concurred by you and I on the spirit side before we were born here, and then we just played out our roles. So that's one reason, or one way it happens. The other way is what you were alluding to just now, is that it wasn't planned in anybody's life plan, but it resulted from somebody's free will running amok and taking them sort of way off course. And so that's the other way it happens. So Albert said it happens both ways, and you don't necessarily know when you're sitting here on Earth when something bad happens, whether it was planned or just as a result of free will actions, gone astray. But those are the two ways that these things do happen. So for sure, sometimes it's planned, and other times it's just somebody is unable to control their negative emotions, and they just go spinning way off course. But even in those situations, if there's a victim involved, if the victim is killed, that happens, as I said before, only if the soul of that person decided it was time to exit. So even if it wasn't planned beforehand, as the events were unfolding, if the soul could see that something was likely to happen which could cause their body to be destroyed or to be killed, they didn't have the choice of saying, okay, well, I'm either going to go along with this and let that person kill me, or if they don't want to choose that as an exit point, then their guardian angels would make sure that they were sort of whisked away, or the bullet missed, or they were wounded in the shoulder only instead of being killed. So that's how a soul could prevent sort of a death when they're not ready for it, even when it's not planned beforehand.
Well, I can see that. It's very interesting. It takes a little while to wrap your mind around, because we're kind of used to the other way of thinking. Did you get any idea of how many times we're here on the Earth plane? How many times do we say come back? Or do we?
Yeah, it varies with each person, with each soul, actually. I mean, which is not surprising, because we all sort of, as humans, we all sort of have different characteristics and different strengths and different weaknesses, and souls are free to choose the pace of their own evolution in terms of how fast they want to evolve, or what they want to have in their evolution to continue their growth. So it's really up to the soul in terms of how many times they come back. No one forces them to come back. You can have a number of lives and then decide you want to stop and stay on the spirit side, or go to another planet and incarnate somewhere else. It's entirely up to the soul. But according to Albert, some of the people that are, excuse me, that you see on Earth, it may be their first incarnation, and for others, it may be several hundred. It's really all over the map. But for a lot of us, I mean, as he said, if you find somebody who seems to be sort of very wise and compassionate and very much of a person who likes to serve their fellow humans, very much of a saint-like person, the chances are that there's somebody who's been had many lives on Earth, and they don't really have that much more to learn themselves, but they come back here on Earth to help others on their journeys. And so there are some of those people, and they've probably had many hundred lives on Earth, and they've already evolved as much as they can on Earth, and they're here to help others. And and if you see somebody who's sort of at the 180-degree opposite end of things, it could very well be they're a new soul, and they're just struggling to work their way through their first few lives and figure out what life on Earth is all about.
Yeah, that's just truly remarkable. After your how long would you say did it take to start to get your book out there after your encounters with your spirit guide like this?
Well, it actually took a little while. When I first met Albert in May of 2007, I was still practicing law, and I retired about a year later. And I think, meeting Albert was a life-changing event, and after that, the practice of law seemed to be kind of irrelevant to me, and I knew that I had to make a change so that I could take a different path in my life. So I retired about a year later, and it took me a while because I had to sort of basically decide whether or not I was going to come out of the spiritual closet, because when I was practicing law, I was not. I mean, I didn't talk to people about spiritual matters or any of the things that Albert and I talked about, because it was a very straight-laced place, and they wouldn't have. I was afraid they would lock me up in a straitjacket if I started talking about the things that Albert and I discussed. So I knew I had to get out of the practice, and then I had to decide in my own mind whether or not I was going to write the book. And then the genesis of that was that partway through my conversation with Albert, I had said to him, some of the things you're telling me are just amazing, and I find them very comforting and inspiring, and it would be great if you could let other people know what you're telling me. And he said, oh, well, I am going to, because you're going to write a book. So that was the first that I heard of it. And initially I was reluctant, but he persisted, and so basically I agreed. And so after I retired, I just mucked around a bit and then sort of get my head into it. And then I decided to start writing it, but even then I wasn't sure if I was ever going to show anybody what was in the book. And I had not told my wife or my family about meeting Albert or anything about our conversation. I kept it all to myself because I wasn't sure what they would think. So I really didn't jump into getting my head into writing the book until about 2 years after I retired, and I got into it, and it took me about a year to do it. And then I had one last sort of decision point was, I could just stick this manuscript in a drawer and never show it to anyone, or I could go try to find a publisher and have it published. And once it was published, of course, it would be out there for everyone to read, and all my former colleagues and friends from my law days would see it, and, I had a concern about what they would think about me, because it was totally, as far as they were concerned, out of character for me to be the spiritual person writing a book. So anyway, so I decided finally that I just had to do it, and if I didn't do it, I'd regret it for the rest of my life. So I finished the manuscript and told my wife and family about it, let them read it, and went to search for a publisher, and I got a publishing offer from Ozark Mountain Publishing in, I think it was December of 2011, yeah. And my book was published about 9 months later, so that was, it wasn't a quick journey, but it was an interesting journey, even though it was difficult at times, but I'm absolutely thrilled that I made the decision to go ahead and publish it, and I'm, just having a great time talking to people about my book and doing things like going on radio shows to spread the message, and I'm right now in the middle of doing my second book, which I hope will be accepted by my publisher, and hopefully will be out sometime in 2014.
Oh, can you talk briefly about that one at all, or is that one under wraps?
I'd rather not disclose what's going into, because
okay.
It's more adventures with Albert. I'm still in contact with him. I haven't quite sorted out, because Albert and I talk about a lot of things and do a lot of things, and I haven't quite sorted out what's going to go into book 2 and what's going into book 3, because there will be another one. There will be 3 books at least, or maybe 4. So I haven't quite sorted it out, so I'd rather not disclose that, but I'll give people lots of warning on my Facebook and website about when it's coming out, and they can, and I'll have a better description about it then when I get closer to the publication date.
Okay, very good. Very good. I know we're running close to the end of this segment. We'll do another one next Thursday. Any other little tidbits you wanted to kind of put in there in our final minutes?
Well, there's lots of very interesting tidbits that Albert disclosed to me. One of the things that sort of helped me understand why it is that we want to leave the spirit side and come here to incarnate on Earth, given that it's so nice over there. And as I mentioned before, he said it's to experience things that aren't available. He said on the spirit side, you can acquire knowledge. You can go to the libraries and all the places where there's research stacked up on the spirit side, and go to the Akashic records where there's records of every life that ever existed in the universe. He says you can go there and you can learn. You can go to lectures. You can watch videos. You can read books. So you can learn about a lot of things. He said, but that knowledge is really book learning, and that you can't really complete your knowledge unless you have some hands-on experiences on the denser planes like Earth. And so he gave me the example. He said, imagine that you're a child growing up in a small village in Kenya, and you've never strayed very far from your home near the equator. He said you could learn in school what sub-zero temperatures are like. You could learn what it'd be like to a human body to be exposed to, say, minus 20 degree temperatures for any length of time. And you could learn that, initially if you're standing out in the cold like that, you'll get goosebumps, and then you'll get some frostbite on parts of your body, and eventually you'll die from hypothermia if you're left out there long enough. He said you could sort of learn this, but you don't really know what minus 20 temperatures are like unless you travel to Siberia in January and stand outside with nothing on. And so that's why we come here to Earth, so we can get some hands-on learning and experiences to complete our book knowledge that we can gain on the spirit side. So that to me sort of helped me understand why we would come here, and it sort of made a lot of sense to me. More sense than it did before, although I'm still struggling with the idea of, why am I going through all this? But I understand that there was a purpose for it, and that I planned most of it, not all of it, but I planned most of it. So that was an interesting tidbit. The other thing that sort of I found it hard to wrap my mind around, Michael, was his assertion that there's no linear time like we know it on Earth on the spirit side. And so when I'm thinking, there's no future, there's no past, it's just all one big now, that's really hard for me to accept. And he acknowledged that. He said it's hard for a human mind to sort of get wrapped around that concept, because on Earth, everything in our life is sort of measured by time. What we did yesterday is the past, and what we're going to do next week is the future, and what I'm doing right now is the present, and everything's measured by linear time. But it just doesn't exist. It just exists on Earth on the denser planes, and so that was a difficult one for me to understand. But on the spirit side, as he said, everything happens at once, and so what you really see is what you choose to focus on. It's not like something was in the past or something is going to happen. It's all happening now, and you just choose to focus on certain things at any sort of one moment, and that's what you sort of are looking at. But it doesn't mean that there's a past or a future. I'm not sure if I'm making any sense or not, Michael, but that's sort of how he explained how there is no linear time, and so that was a very interesting thing, and something that I guess I will find out in the fullness of time after I cross over myself.
Yeah, won't we all? We're just kind of like a minute left. Can you, Garnet, one more time let people know how people can get your book?
Right. Well, the easiest way is to go to my website, which is dancingonastamp.com, and on the homepage there's a number of buy links, like the Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Book Depository, various other online sites, where if you click on the link, it'll take you right to the book on that site, and you can just put in your order. There's a lot of bricks and mortar stores, like in Barnes & Noble and other ones, that will carry it. It's not throughout their system. It's really up to the manager as to whether they stock my book or not. But if your favorite bookstore does not have a copy of my book, they will certainly order it for you. And that's sort of the easiest way of getting a book, either at your favorite bookstore or online.
Okay, very good. Well, Garnet, I really have enjoyed our hour here. Boy, very interesting book, and a lot to contemplate. And we'll be back here with you next Thursday here at the same time. So thanks again so much for coming on tonight.
Well, thank you for inviting me, Michael. I really enjoyed this hour, and I'm looking forward to next week for the next section.
Okay, very good. You have a great week. We'll see you next week. Good night.
See you, Michael. Night.
All righty. What a great hour, a great book, and a great guy who wrote that book here tonight. I am going to change course here tonight, and I did have another show scheduled after this, but many of you guys may have known, on top of barely having any sleep today, my son got into a car accident. Thank God he is safe. But that was basically just before airtime, and since then I need to spend time with him and all that. So I am going to wrap up tonight's broadcast, and we'll see you guys here for a full week of shows next, starting Monday night. So you guys have a great week and weekend. Thanks for being here, and we'll see you on Facebook. So Have a great weekend, and good night, everybody.